Piracy has existed as long as man has been at sea, and yet when we think of pirates, we only think of the 1700s.
Oh yeah. And you know what? Cowboys are the same. They're probably
yeah.
people who were veterans of the Civil War who went west explicitly to go kill and steal.
Yeah.
Well,
and steal and kill and kill and
like
steal.
like motherfucking Caesar was kidnapped by pirates. People forget that. Like that's if you wanna short circuit a fucking normal fag's brain, just tell them that, and they will have an aneurysm because they think of 1700s motherfuckers and they're like pirates, but
Well, people forget pirates, and nobody's ever going to talk about Ottoman pirates, of course.
No one's ever going to talk about the Bronze Age collapse where you fucking put a flower pot on your head and got an axe, killed a bunch of Egyptians.
I don't know, like, it's easy to forget about the Bronze Age collapse because it was so incredibly far away, but, you know, the Ottoman Empire was just too... Well, it collapsed in World War One, and even until World War One, actually, it's fair to say that they just armed a bunch of poor Arabs on bad boats and sent them out to try to capture Western boats and rob them.
Yeah,
Ottomans, and they did that for centuries.
And the Barbary States, mostly fucking North
and
Africans.
And the Barbary States. The whole of the Barbary Coast.
For some... I don't understand why the Barbary States happened either, but...
Because Arabs actually have always lived that lifestyle. That they're from a desert, man. They used to raid each other's villages. They still do. They're still like, they're still sprinkling Willie Peter over the Yemenites so that they can take their water hole.
And then for some reason, the Americans in Sweden had to roll into the Barbary States and shoot them up.
Well, actually, the United States got tired of their ships being specifically attacked, and so they showed up and bombed Tripoli.
With Sweden.
It
was a very bizarre... Like, you would imagine that one of the greater powers nearby would have done something.
No, the greater powers was Spain, and Spain was probably not going to piss them off because they were already in a tenuous peace.
Just roll in and bomb them to stop the piracy. I was going to assume it was because maybe Spain had its shit together more. Like, you can't really fuck with the British, French, or Spanish navies as much.
No, that they had a deal, right? That's how it worked. That they had a deal. They essentially paid all of the fucking everybody from Morocco. Well, Morocco was a colony until very late, and it's still one of the most. It is probably the most prosperous country in Africa for a reason, because that whole place was tamed, the Maghreb. But then, and as soon as you get to Libya and Egypt, that place is a mess. And that place was essentially until World War One, the Ottoman area. It was their corner of the Mediterranean Sea. So nobody gave a fuck about that. But more or less, European states had an agreement, and piracy did not actually happen that much. But when they saw an American ship, they were like, "They're fucking Americans. They're lost. Time to rob them."
And then that's not to mention the French and Anglos that kept raiding Spanish stuff in general in the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like pirates better than cowboys by a long shot because, first of all, like, pirates were such a universal phenomenon down there. The reason they exist in the first place is because privateers were sent down there. What were privateers? Just state-sponsored pirates. Actual private enterprises where, you know the whole thing about the letter of marque and so on. where they would buy the right to go fight the other country's ships out there in the New World.
There are these linchpin archetypes, though. I don't know if it's as simple as cowboy or pirate. Which do you prefer? It's more like there's these linchpin archetypes like cowboy, pirate, samurai, Viking, the memes. They're memes for a reason. They're memes for a reason, to the extent that a samurai and a cowboy, for the purposes of filmmaking, are completely interchangeable. And the pirate and the cowboy. A pirate is just a cowboy at sea. And like the concept of a pirate like dual wielding his flintlock pistols, it's a fucking cowboy. That's like the cowboy mythos manifested, and then it was put back onto the pirate mythos.
Well, actually, it's perfectly fair. The idea of pirates firing 1 million different flintlock pistols, because that's exactly what they did.
Yeah, they did do that.
They actually unironically covered themselves in flintlock pistols because they were single fire. They would just shoot and drop, shoot and drop.
Yeah, that goes back to like, I was wondering if it's the power of the devices given to the cowboy. Is like when they got out of muskets, now it's like one man has the power before one reload he can kill 6 people if he's good enough. So like a pirate being able to just covered in flintlock pistols, that would also facilitate that.
Oh, they were probably very good at it.
Because it's like, the idea is that you fight chaos, but you are also chaos itself.
That's the thing. Pirates, like especially the English pirates, were veterans of wars over there that were essentially bribed into joining in as privateers, who survived that and then ended up as pirates. So those guys knew how to fight if they had survived, probably very well for the time. Real hard asses.
It's about individuality being melded with chaos, having the power to strike down many other men, giving the Weaver the finger.
Killing, yeah.
Yeah.
It's about killing. Killing is what the whole point of it.
There's also knights as another meme archetype. It's like it's just the concept of being an empowered individual, like a chaos warrior. You're able to express
the fantasy of being an unbeatable warrior.
You're a wandering, unbeatable warrior that basically only answers to himself or to the warband leader, your posse leader.
The samurai in that one, and I forget. Whoever made the one samurai in that 50s Japanese movie that dodges gunshots before knifing the guy down.
The 50s movie did that?
Yeah, it's by the guy who made Hidden Fortress and all the other Seven Samurai and all the famous ones.
Kurosawa?
Yeah, Kurosawa. It's a Kurosawa flick. About, I think, The Last Samurai.
Oh, it's
fighting guys with guns.
You know what's strange is also that an Italian studio produced cowboy films based on samurai movies.
Oh, it's not just an Italian studio. It's Italians with Italian actors and Italian everything because they decided they loved cowboys so much.
Yeah, and then they That's what I mean. Is that the samurai and the cowboy are interchangeable. It's like that guy who said Jews fear the samurai, and that cowboys are the samurai of America. Is that
Yeah. That insane like
Ugh,
kendo instructor who just put himself and made an ISIS like I won't say ISIS. That's terrible. No, he made a Bin Laden, an Al Qaeda style video.
that man is if there's anyone who's in the Ascension War, like actually in it to win it, it's that fucking guy.
Rise up, cowboys and samurais of the world.
Because he calls out Jews, he calls out reptilians, he calls out fucking everything.
He's a Japanese man calling out. That's just like that's telling, you know. It's like an African man walking up to you and telling you, you know, man, there's a lot of tax fraud going on in modern corporations. You look at him like, you know, brother, lots of tax fraud happening in the accounting department. How do you know that shit? Who made you come up with that?
it's something? And like unintentionally, what I was telling Tim is one of the more interesting experiments I've tried to do is figuring out how to turn Eurasia into the Wild West and figuring out why that didn't work. I had to explain that the Byzantine Empire basically survives, and then somehow Eurasia turns into the Wild West. But I ran into a problem, and then I had to go down the rabbit hole.
Oh wow! Well, you know you're in for a treat because that's kind of what happened. The actual history of it is the Byzantine Empire is actually the last one to hold that on the Mongol Empire, and their colonies up in the Caspian Sea held out long after like all of Eastern Europe and up to Germany was fucking devastated by the Mongols. The way they did it is you know the Varangians and all that.
Yeah.
The mercenary culture of the Byzantine Empire has always existed, and what they did is that they started hiring the Mongols against each other. Now, picture you want a good cowboy image? Picture a Marco Polo style, like probably an Italian or a Greek guy on his fucking horse in the middle of what is today like Kazakhstan, leading a bunch of Mongols against other Mongols. And that's actually what happened. It's verifiable.
That's kind of like the Lawrence of Arabia and Dune archetype.
Yeah.
It's another aspect
but
of the white
probably,
man.
but like more elaborate, as in those Mongols were essentially funded and armed. And that's why, you know, Turkey, that would be the East Central region. The principal practitioners of in that place were Tengri until the founding of the Ottoman Empire, and about like 30 years later when they decided to impose Muslim rule over everybody. Which is to say, modern Turks, especially in the East and all of the Caucasus, are actually probably much more Mongol than any of the Russians or that sort of places. Actual Mongols. Mongol.
Yeah, like it seems like it could work, but it's like the problem is that Eurasia is not very alien and it's heavily populated and contested over, and it has too much.
Keep in mind the Byzantine Empire collapsed long after the Mongol raids were over.
Until
a century and a half after Mongols stopped harassing anybody anywhere.
And then another breed of Turkic steamrolled them anyway.
Yeah, in a sense, like the mixed meat of Mongol and Arab just bred for like 2 centuries, out of sight, but not out of mind. until it managed to get rich enough to steamroll. And there is a lot of shit to it, which is that Constantinople was a puppet state for the last like almost century of its existence of the West. Because it was very rich, because trade was an actual like it was like it's like the United States intervening to prop up Hong Kong. Basically that.
It's not a bad theme either. It's unique to that area.
There was some history TV show where they actually did a full like romanticized essentially a TV show of the siege of Constantinople. That's actually very enjoyable to watch, and they did a good job of making the founder of the Ottoman Empire and the leader of the siege of, it was like I think it's like the 12th siege of Constantinople. He's a fucking cracker. He's a fucking cracker. He's a fucking cracker, you know, advised by like Greekish looking guys. I mean, they look kind of Arabish, but they're not actual Arabs. So whoever made that like history TV show were on par to let you know that they hadn't mongrelized fully into Arabs and Mongols and so on, but they did essentially use them in endless waves to attack the enemy. In fact, that's the whole Arab ethos and how they conducted their holy wars forever. And they conducted, I think, like jihad as the notion of getting together and going to fight someone, the fatwa. Well, the fatwa is personal. The jihad is created by these attacks on Constantinople by Arabs. They spent probably almost 1,000 years trying to dab on the Byzantine Empire and Constantinople, and they kept failing, and they kept sending human wave after human wave. Basically, they would gather all the trash in the Arab world, all of the trash, the trash that wanted to fight each other, and that would fight each other if they weren't put in all in one place, put them into these actually astroturfed cities. I think at some point they rebuilt the whole of Acre. You know, Acre, the Crusader state, the whole city that was razed to the ground by Arabs, they built it back up. The whole thing, exactly like it was before, just so they could have an extra town so that they could move in all of the Arab world's trash and then send it in a human wave against Constantinople. And for 1,000 years, they held out in constant wars. And they held out against the Mongols. It's just that what killed the Byzantine Empire is, first of all, that all of the colonies weren't so lucky, and that people moved out. People just fucking moved out. All of the surrounding area slowly mongrelized, got more and more devastated by war, and people just fucking left. Hence why, by the way, and people don't know this, you know, like Constantinople is actually on both banks of the river Istanbul today. You go and the Bosphor cuts a city in two. You can see it visibly, and it actually extends on both sides quite a bit. If you go on the eastern side, people are actually ethnically different than the people on the western side. Because they self-segregated for a very long time. If you go on the western side of Istanbul today, it's well, they won't exactly be white people, will they? They'll be very different. And it's also why Ankara is the capital of Turkey. Because when Ataturk took over the country, it was also in big part the second coming of let's kick out white people and take all the money. And so they kicked out all the white people, took all the money, imposed Islamic rule on everybody, and reimposed, before it was just state religion, then it became police state religion, forcing it on everyone. And then they moved the capital to essentially some backwater shithole town in the middle of swarthy Turkey, in the central region where all the goat herders lived, so that they could really flex on the fact that they hated the West. The Ottoman Empire is a fascinating story as well. Because, well, they took Constantinople. Do you think it just ended there? I think they just killed every last white-looking motherfucker and then just swung their dicks over the walls for the next 400 years? No, the Ottoman Empire immediately succeeded that, and they were the primary power probably in the world for 2 centuries at some point. Century and a half is probably fairer. So yeah, you want cowboys? What about the endless mercenaries, the killers for hire, both from Europe and from all of the Arab world, that killed each other for 1,000 years down there? Usually not at the gates of Constantinople. That was the big final throwdown. No, it was probably actual guerrilla warfare all over, around the Caspian Sea and on the Turkish peninsula and so on. And Christian was rambling about how we were watching that gangster from LA with his scars and shoving knives up his ass and all that, and he was like, put him in a floppy hat and you have a Renaissance fighter. Well, put him in a different hat and he's probably from that era. Because that's sort of what that's down to. Men removed extremely far from their birthplace. You could say to the frontiers of reality of the New World.
No.
And given no choice but to consistently kill for money.
There's something to it because, like, there's cowboy stuff that happened elsewhere, like the guerrilla warfare in Spain during the Napoleonic era, and but there's nothing about them. There's just like a total war game that everyone hates.
Yeah. There's like in Spain itself, they don't actually care about what happened in the Napoleonic Wars. But they know, they'll tell you all about the Civil War and people having guerrilla fights that way. Yeah. In fact, when Bishop and I climbed some mountain in Spain, we got to the top and there was a little house, or no, the remains of a house built out of stones. And of course, Bishop, with his supernatural ability to just find his way through things, found a hidden tunnel. And I'm not joking, like, this was not a visible tunnel. Found a hidden tunnel entrance. Like picture Skyrim, you're running around the mountain, right? But summer Skyrim, except the tunnel entrance has been reduced to being like the size of your arm, and very cleverly conceived into like a crack in the side of the mountain,
that
in a place you wouldn't even where you shouldn't be looking at. Once he found it,
it didn't exist until Bishop made it appear there.
And you know what was happening? I was, of course, pissing. I turned my back to him where he's like wandering around, and I start pissing. And then I turn back around, he's gone. And this makes no sense. This makes no sense because the entire stretch behind me is flat. There's like no humanly possible way to run away that fast, right? Because I only turned around for a second. It just actually vanished. And what crosses my mind is like the missing persons reports from American national parks.
Yeah.
And my brain putting it together like, oh no. And so I wander around and I hear him just like scrounging around these tunnels. And we get down there, and there's like there's this actual tunnel network down there that's really wide. There's an actual well. Of course, he went as far as possible. But I had a guess that this was Spanish resistance fighters during the Civil War who had built a guard outpost on top of a mountain and dug tunnels to escape through. Like Vietnam style, but through a mountain so that they could escape if their guard post was assaulted. And so my first thought was, well, if this thing isn't booby-trapped, it's probably so badly maintained that you have like every chance of dying down there. And what does Bishop do? He actually climbed down into the tunnels, which were barely wider than his own frame, as fast as he could.
He went into the VC hole.
Yeah. And he was like, hey, bro, hold the light and follow me. I was like, no.
Follow me into the Viet Cong hole. Let's go find out.
Let's go find out, yeah.
Let's go find out where Ho Chi Minh is.
Let's go find out where fucking Franco is hiding because he never actually died. He's hiding in a resistance fighter hole. And we come back out and we met a shepherd down the mountain. And he was like, yeah, that was like a resistance fighter outpost. It was one of the last places during the war that they actually like made a stand. And they actually would like those tunnels go all over the mountains, he told us. And then he followed it up by looking at me and saying, did you really climb through them?
Did you really?
So yeah, all of that to say, you know, out in the desert-like mountains of Spain, cowboys. And in fact, that shepherd we walked through, he was a shepherd of, guess what? Cows. He had a bunch of cows in the field behind him, and he didn't have them like locked up. He was a proper rancher. He held them together with 3 dogs and just moved them from like side to side of this mountain to graze. Technically, just a gun away from being a cowboy. He did tell us about how he used to have a giant sword just like Bishop's, and he used to kill wild boar with it, with his dogs. Just like, picture that concept. Wild boar is incredibly dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Picture just having your dogs flush out a wild boar and executing it in the head with a side stroke, with a sword.
With a sword, not even a spear.
Not even a spear, with a sword.
You say that was from that tunnel is from the Spanish Civil War?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know.
If you want to look it up, actually, you might find something on it.
No, I believe it. I understand it. I'm just reflecting on, like, the guerrillas seem to leave no discernible impression. They obviously did, but not a major one. But it's more like that was not happening on the frontier of reality. That was happening well within.
Oh yeah, no. And
civilization.
Orwell fought there, and it was anything but the frontier of reality. That's why it left no lasting expression, because they didn't create something new, right? It wasn't alien the way. It shocks nobody. They didn't reach some kind of crazy archetypal extreme because they were in an alien environment.
I meant the anti-Napoleon guerrillas, but yeah, the Civil War guerrillas too.
Oh, yeah. No, those were not Napoleonic war tunnels.
And there's like they did leave no.
Spain.
It doesn't help that Spain has. I don't know what to call it. It's like they just don't really have a presence in the warp that's connected with the rest of us.
No, they don't. That's a lot of Europe, by the way. They just don't have a presence in the warp.
Spain, in particular, because of its size and its past influence. And it is Western Europe too, but it has nothing.
You wouldn't be saying that if you were in Latin America, and you would be saying that about Italians if Italians hadn't come over to live in your spot and you were eating their pizzas. See what I mean?
I think it's the same thing about Italians, because Italians also have like nothing going on.
Well, you guys have Italian Americans too.
Vaguely, that's mostly in the Northeast. That's mostly, I guess, Dag would maybe care, but we don't really give
You
a
guys
shit.
have a lot of media about them and so on. Where's the Spaniard showing up in American media? It's a good point.
The Spaniard. It's
But
just
yeah,
that's
Spain is a complete blind spot because it
It's
stopped
not
existing.
actually about Spain, though. It's about the mafia, which is, I mean, there's parts of it there, but it's about the American branch of it.
Mm-hmm. Italia. But yeah, that's fair.
Before I forget it,
It's fair.
remember that one?
To be fair, the mafia and all the movies and The Godfather and so on is a very good expression of actual Italian shit. Sure, it's Italian American, but
Italians significantly have more influence than Spain by far.
yeah.
And
You ask the average American like what they know about Spain, they'll tell you that the people down south speak it.
Yeah.
it's like
Italian though, they'll talk, oh, pizza and mafia and this and that.
Pizza pasta, kicking my ass.
they just have less shamans waving sticks around, screaming to the entire war, creating demons that live forever. Like what?
Actually, I have a lot of interesting stories about Spain, but it's none of it is alien. None of it is alien.
None
at
of
all.
it's alien, and it shocked no one, either in the Napoleonic Wars in Spain or the Civil War. Like nothing really.
Or
happened.
any war, any modern war. Spain shocked nobody.
Maybe the guerrilla wars in the Napoleonic era like affected Spain's consensus, but it didn't.
No, not
beyond.
really. No. The reason that happened is because Spain, the guerrilla, the little war. That's what it means in Spanish. Has always been the standard of Spain because Spain is the second most mountainous country after Switzerland. Did you know that? Norway is less mountainous than Spain. Spain is nothing but hills. And what happens when you have nothing but hills? Hill warfare, tunnels, people hiding, people going around maneuvering in small groups. And so that's always been like the Spanish meta of warfare.
And before I forget, you remember that rant I was having about gold? Like money prevents us from like going off the grid or something. I don't remember the specifics, but then I zeroed in on condottieri in the Italian unification wars. I was like, gee, this is like...
well, the Italian unification wars were like an extremely modern and overblown things, and the condottieros are fucking like overdone invention. It's classic Italian like embellishment of random shit they've done, which actually amounted to nothing. The unification wars were pathetic, and all of the deaths are almost uniquely attributable to both vastly exaggerated casualty counts to glorify some specific tiny part of Italy that fought, and also just disease breaking out right at that time.
For some reason, it's mostly because of Grand Strategy and Age of Empires that I even am aware of that era. I zeroed in on that,
romanticized.
but then I thought about it, and then I'm like, you know what? That's kind of like the Balkans and Anatolia too. That's like the mercenary stuff where you're not adherent to a state. You just get your fucking gold that you can use anywhere.
What happened in Italy is that England decided Italy should be unified in the mid-19th century because Napoleon had destroyed almost all of Europe, and so they decided, you know what, it would be better if Italy was in a full nation because Napoleon had conquered part of the north and had actually sourced a lot of his artillery from Italy. So they were like, you know what, Italy, we're going to turn you into an actual country, and they created a civil war by picking out a guy and telling him, okay, here's a lot of money, unify Italy. And so what they did is that they engaged into a proper war that wasn't actual a civil war or a unification war. It was a war where everybody was trying to essentially take out their grudge against their neighbor that had been built up because of the Napoleonic Wars and because they had They had had previous wars lasting as far as the south of Spain being under Charles V and the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire. And then what they did is because, the English were essentially paying for these quote unquote Italian mercs to kill each other, because it's kind of what happened. They greatly exaggerated how many people died. They were like, yeah, we totally killed 1 million people outside of Rome. We did such a great job.
Well, to be fair, it's not really a discussion about how big it actually was. It's about how larger than life it was, because we can't know, we just can't know what the Wild West was actually like, because no one's going to write. If you don't tell anyone, no one's going to write about the guy who got shot 500 miles in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, but people get the idea, and there are actual accounts of how frontiersmen lived in America and in northern Canada and so on.
Frontiersmen, but then there's day-to-day life. Look at look at just modern day. What I tell you about my town and all these surrounding areas. This is with the government and the Weaver having so much influence and control over us, and we continue to try to manifest the Wild West and have knife fights and shoot each other in town. Rarely does it get to that point, but it almost gets to that point, and it would if not for the monopoly of power over us. So you have to think, then what was day-to-day life like on the frontier after they had their towns?
Violence.
Who's gonna, if so people report on everything now, but if they're, it's hard, I can't even really set up a scenario. No one's going to write about it if you just have an argument with a guy in the bar and you fucking stab him in the behind the saloon and walk away. They just throw him in a hole.
In the forever hole.
And that's in town. That's assuming that you actually want to get your violence on in town with a gun. If not fist fighting or knife fighting, it's not happening in town most likely. They ride out and then shoot each other, and then they get forgotten about in the middle of nowhere. The point is, though, regardless, they're larger than life. They have the warp shamans creating the fucking demon that is superimposed from the cowboy. You have the cowboy, and then you have this skyscraper fucking monolith shadow of it that echoes through the warp.
I think it is necessary to have a completely wild environment. It's just no rules, no nothing. Pirates are a good example of that. Cowboys are, to an extent, in their romanticized version, an example of that. As you said, in reality, they probably had to deal with a lot more that meant that the environment they were in was a lot less wild than it is believed to be, and the same is kind of true of pirates. Same with samurai. It's believed that samurai is mystical.
The Sengoku era.
Where it was just extremely wild and free and whatever, when that was probably not true at all.
True enough that at the least there was a guy who would walk into a sake bar, and then he gets shifty eyes from the people inside, and he puts his hand to his holster, pulls his katana out. It's not even just that there are no rules, but you are able... You can really choose the fate of the world. You have the power to do it, but while also... You face extreme hardship in addition to your extreme power compared to how we live now. At least compared to our idealization of that time period compared to now.
Well, you know, people have a very cowboy idea of how financial speculators, traders were before electronic trading in the new millennium. And effectively, yes, they absolutely were. And all of them were doing backroom shit and blatantly illegal shit on top of brilliant shit, but they were operating all on an actual frontier.
You remember the
information frontier.
You remember how I found out about the origins of the term troubleshooter?
No.
A troubleshooter is someone that you send in to shoot the trouble, because it was like power lines, railroads, mines, and stuff that would be getting raided by bandits in the Wild West. So the company would actually send in a troubleshooter to shoot the trouble, and then that became like an actual expression in business, and then it became a computation thing. And then I reflected, it's like how did I make that leap into like troubleshooters shooting people that mess with the Weaver's web, to now where you have some central command thing that is troubleshooting us, eliminating us in the system.
Well, it's just like it's just like the origin of the term protagonist. A protagonist was actually a title. It was someone you could hire, and essentially what you would do with them is the dude would get a nominal fee. It would cost a bit because the guy would go up, start shit, start like drinking with some guy, whoever your mark was, being like, oh, this or that, whatever, start acting the fool, start drinking harder with this guy, and then essentially goad him into starting a duel outside. And so they would go, and he would pretend to be drunker than he was, or fucking whatever, and then he would fucking kill him. And because of the culture, he didn't like fucking get executed usually, because it was just like, oh, I don't know, he had too much to drink, and he started shit. He shot first. He attacked first. Not shot. It was before widespread personal firearms. But yeah, and then he would essentially get a slap on the wrist, because it was just like, okay, well, he was the one who tried to force it, and you know, you're in exile. That's your punishment. And so he would fucking leave that city, probably never come back, but he would get the money from whoever it was that was like, I want that guy fucking dead. That is the protagonist.
Yeah, that's another good freeze frame of the energy, that there was something going on there. But the troubleshooting thing, that's like the perfect segue into what Tim is talking about, and how the cowboy mindset persisted and permeates into things that don't involve shooting. It permeated into computers. It's like literally the early days of the Weaver taming the wild is like, if you fuck with the Weaver's web, if you fuck with its telephone wires and its railroads, it fucking sends out the antivirus program. It sends out its fucking programmer, a troubleshooter, a guy with a gun, and he just caps you. And that
puts you on the spot.
And it persisted. Yeah, the cowboy stuff. That's the point. It's like, of all of it is that the cowboy thing, whatever the meta behind it, cowboy, samurai, pirate, whatever. This empowered, free sort of individual who can express himself like physically. Is that mentality persisted, and it taints us. It's like it's partially could be responsible for like school shootings, mass murders, because those are fucking the outlaws. They literally wear black fucking trench coats, walk into town and kill everybody. They're literally the fucking bad guys.
Correct.
Fucking comparing that KMFDM 0 hour music video to The Highwaymen by The Highwaymen. Yeah, because that music video starts off with glorifying an outlaw, a guy who's just wearing black, and he just steps out and he shoots two guys off their carriage, and fucking snatches the baubles off of some woman while she screams. And they're like, yeah, that's a badass outlaw. I'm a country singer telling you this guy was badass.
Well, it's the part where they kill that's interesting. Glorified. That's glorious.
You're free. You don't fucking bend the knee, you shoot people.
Freedom of it, but it's also just the ultimate expression of power. Someone who kills, it doesn't matter what is going to be ideal.
So when in Shadowrun, whenever they make the Matrix and they try to impose all these restrictions and regulations, and you have cyber cowboys running around in the system, they're like getting shot at and they're just jumping over fences and wrangling cattle and shit.
Mm-hmm. People who who break the law and who break the law probably in the greatest ways, which is they kill things, they steal things.
Cocaine cowboys too. The CIA, they can be cowboys.
Yeah.
You can.
Well, it's almost implied. In fact, a cowboy is pretty much a business term too for someone who just operates outside the law, usually in a third world country. I don't remember what. There was actually a financial rigging scam where some bank like rigged something, and they called them the cow. And the something. There was the Chicago Camarilla, which are, in fact, they are properly infamous because nobody talks about them. The Chicago Camarilla. The Chicago Camarilla are actual bond traders who coordinated their transactions on the trading floor over there in Chicago, where they used to trade most contracts for bonds and things and whatever to rig markets. And Camarilla means syndicate, Italian. Since they were all Italian, it worked. Cowboy. Ram Ranch Cowboy.
Ram Ranch. Ram Ranch, Dick's Ram Ranch.
Space cowboys. That only exists because of Cowboy Bebop.
See you, Space Cowboy.
But it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense, and of course the Japanese made that logical leap. Didn't take long for them to catch on to that.
There's something so resonant about it. And like, even on Space Station 13, I will frequently find myself with an actual 6-shooter. Suddenly I'm a cowboy, and I'm loving it, and I'm fucking shooting people in the head, outrunning the law, where I'm working with the law, and I'm going to go grab the I can't think of a fucking slang for a bad guy. Go wrangle the cattle rustler, shoot him in the head, bring him in. And it's not even like, it's rarely something you premeditate. It's just like, I have my cursor over my gun in my holster, and I'm walking into a dark fucking room. Not just... The cowboy's at the center of the triad. Mostly on the wild. because he has the dynamism to go wherever he wants, whereas most people just fall into one.
Most people fall into the garbage.
TM's lit up, but he's not talking.
TM's lit. Let's get lit in here.
There's a lot we can learn from dissecting this archetype. It's fucking everywhere. Where does it come from? Exactly what brain receptors it occupies. The placeholders in our belief systems. Why is it that in tabletop you fuckers, like half the time, are playing as cowboys?
Cowboys. Cowboy is the hero.
The fuck he is. The hero of his own story, maybe. That's the point.
Exactly. That's the... Did I fucking stutter? I didn't say whose fucking story. I said he's the hero.
Red Dead Redemption is all about, we have cars now, we have machine guns now, you're fucking done. We don't want you anymore. We'll kill you and your whole family.
We'll kill you and your...
I'm going to delete the cowboy virus from my brain when the Dark Tower is finished.
Delete cowboys.
Because this is...
What is the Dark Tower? I'm not up to date on that at all.
It's Stephen King's self-proclaimed masterpiece of everything he's ever made. And it's a massive book series he's been making since the 80s. And it's about a gunslinger, and he's in a very fucked up world, and it's getting more fucked up. Not by the day, because time itself is starting to decay. And basically, it's also what Dylan based his character on. It's what Irwin is. I'm the antagonist in that. Both ends of the gunslinger is chasing this fucking this man in hooded monk robes, who's like an extension of entropy, who travels dimensions, weaving the unweaving of every reality that he can. And the gunslinger, it's not just America. He's not from America. He's from another world. He's from some fucked up world where gunslingers literally are their knights. They actually had a King Arthur figure that preceded them, and gunslingers are the knights. They get sent out by the king to the outer worlds. And the gunslinger is traveling the worlds looking for the Dark Tower, because everything is fucked. He's looking for the Dark Tower and he wants to shoot the man in black in the back of the head.
Interesting.
Gunslinger chasing a man in black. A man in black is also another thing. It's literally like in cowboy shit where the bad guy is wearing black. It's also about that blues singer who sold his soul to the devil at the crossroads in some desert to a fucking man in black.
Black equals bad.
Kill all black people.
I'm gonna go eat, and then I actually want to watch a cowboy movie. And there might actually be cowboy movies out there I haven't seen, worth seeing. So I'll leave you with that. If you decide.
I don't know what to watch for cowboy stuff. That's the thing.
It will be. I don't know. What was some good meme shit? Cowboy movies. Go watch Cowboys versus Aliens.
Yes. That's exactly what someone would recommend. You asked a random person on the street.
What the fuck? This is a good series of pictures. Bunch of pictures of fucking retail stores that have been closed for however many months we've been on lockdown. And everything's getting overtaken with mold.
Pentax up. Pentax did it all along. You don't want to blame him because it's too obvious.
Don't want to blame them.
Pentax will buy up every business that closes down and then just let them decay.
Yeah.
Lamp oil, rope, bombs. You want it? Big bones. Big bone, big bone, big bone, big bone, big bone, big bones.
You know, it's actually quite an amazing coincidence in house games that you gave my character hooded fucking monk robes, exactly like the antagonist in the Dark Tower, which Dylan based his character Abel off of. Because that is why we are where we are now.
It was a
Oh wait. Oh,
was
no.
Spirit of Entropy. Was the same guy that told you that you should get possessed. Get Banes in your
Yes,
bones.
exactly.
I got it from a future that was I don't know how much of it was reference and how much of it was original. That's honestly what I like about house games is that somebody is like, I'm going to do a game based on this, and then it can be either 1% that or 100% that, because it was a game ripped off from some fucking 80s episode of Doctor Who about the future where there was some cult. We had to finagle around murdering some people and getting their magically repairing robes to get into their cult warehouse, which had a portal to some fucking interdimensional hellhole.
Yes.
Where
You went into another dimension, got these cult robes, you gave them to my character, and then I became an interdimensional trickster servant of entropy, just like this character from Stephen King, who wrote the book that Dylan based his character on, that he's the protagonist of. I didn't actually. This is actually why I'm reading The Dark Tower, is because I looked up pictures that I could use for Irwin. So I was looking at like guys wearing hooded monk robes. So I found that second picture I posted, and then I clicked on where that's from, and I was like, oh, this is The Dark Tower. So I looked at The Dark Tower. I'm like, oh, this is where Dylan based his character on. Oh, now I see why Dylan wants to kill Irwin so much, because I am the antagonist in this book series, and I didn't even realize it.
Yeah, you got the old treatment of making a character without even knowing it. It's classic. It's classic, really.
And Irwin even started his operations in Nevada, just like how this character, this interdimensional trickster servant of entropy, started. Is that after the post-apocalypse, he starts a war band in Las Vegas, and he's a supernatural sorcerer. And then after that, he starts traveling through all the fucking dimensions, including other stories that Stephen King wrote. And that's the meta plot of Dark Tower, is that you're traveling through all the worlds, including some of the Stephen King novels. And that's why you run into the Man in Black.
Congratulations! You may now play the game of life.
And the reason that Irwin laughs all the time is because I coincidentally got that fucking derangement where I fucking laugh constantly, and I have to. So he just grins evilly at all times under the hood. Just like that character. Laughs constantly. That actually is like, that's the best takeaway of house games for me, and I'm fine that it's dead now, because that's pretty much the best.
Well, that is why it dies, is because those who are the main motivators, the main cabooses on this train, get what they want out of it. And their characters either die or come to a good endpoint, and then it just is like, well, now it's time for somebody else to run for me, and because they are the motivating factors, nobody wants to run for them, and so it dies. Because they have no more use of it. But that's part of it. It's life and death. It's a cycle. Goes around and around. Maybe we'll get end times, or maybe it'll just happen again. Where there's bodies in need of the lessons that can be imparted via tabletop shit. And then it gets resurrected. Good enough for me. One day, one day, one day, one day. One day, we shall overcome. Cockroaches flying into your urethra.